Welcome back to Area DMG. I'm your host, Will Wesley, the Mile High Mouth, and today I'm going to talk a little bit about Pokemon. Or rather, drama regarding Pokemon. There actually is a lot because of Pokemon Go. Yes, Pokemon Go! Okay. Because one thing I've thought was kind of amusing about Pokemon Go is that, well, I'm old. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm old. I've seen all this before. We've seen all of this before, okay? There is a Bible verse that says that there is nothing new under the sun. And guess what? That Bible verse is right. Now, when mobile phones first showed up, they were the size of a large... I know it. They're about the size of a freaking football. Yeah. And they only worked in certain spots, had a keypad, and an antenna that you had to extend, and sometimes you had to attach them to your car or some other power source because they only would get like maybe 30 minutes of actual battery life. So you're walking around with like... And that's ridiculous. Then along came smaller cell phones. And there was like, wait, cell phones are going to kill people. People are going to be walking along with their cell phones, these massive ones, this is even back then, and they're going to get hit by cars. People are going to try and drive with these things. These are going to kill people. Then text messaging came out. Remember, you used to be charged for text messaging. After a certain amount of characters, I think it was like 144, where have I heard that before? You would get charged per letter in your text messages. And people are like, people are going to just be texting and they're not going to be paying attention and they're going to walk into manholes or off cliffs, blah, 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 blah. Kind of like how there are people who are like, didn't the guy who invented the Segway go flying off a cliff? No, Dean Kamen is alive. That's just an urban legend. Go check it out on Snopes or whatnot. It's just something people do. There's kind of this technophobic thing in the back of everyone's mind where, oh, new technology. People are going to buy the Oculus Rift and they'll be walking around with their Gear VRs and their Sony Morpheuses and they're going to go walk into traffic or into trains or into the river. They're going to die. We're all going to die. Spoiler alert. Guess what? We all die. Many times we don't know how it's going to happen. Just don't put yourself into situations where that's going to really actually kill you. So anyways, let's get back to Pokemon Go. I've seen a lot of things where like, Pokemon Go is going to be horrible. People are going to put lures out there and rob people. And about 90% of those stories are faked. Or 90% of those stories were ill-researched, or they have a clickbait headline, or they're circle-sourced. Circle-sourced is when Polygon says something that's unverified, but they say, well, yeah, we're saying this anyways. Then Kotaku goes, oh man, do we want to say the same exact thing? Let's use Polygon as a source. They use Polygon as a source, and Polygon goes, well, let's write another article about this, and we'll use the source from Kotaku, which was sourcing us, to verify it as true. Yes, that happens. It's called collusion, and it's bad. And it's also called circle sourcing, and it's a lie. Anyways, the problem is, a lot of people are trying to tell you that Pokemon Go is this horrible thing now. People are just... No, the thing that it does that's horrible is that it drains your battery. I've been playing it a little bit. My phone doesn't really do much with it. But, I mean, seriously, sometimes it works at like 5 frames per second. But I like the fact that I can go to the area near City Hall and the Aurora Museum and the library, and there's like a half dozen little Pokestops. And all the Pokestops are memorials. That's so weird. Pokestops are memorials, and the library is a Pokestop, and a lot of the churches are gyms. I've seen some gyms that are actual gyms, which is amusing. And this actually helps a bit because I've noticed some of the businesses around here will be like, oh yeah, we're a Pokestop, we're near one. Hey, while you're doing this, will people come out for these? They walk into those stores. People get out there and look at it. There was some people wandering around at like 7 o'clock at night in the little park between the city hall and the library, playing this in groups of like 3 or 4, and I realized, like, we ran into these people who they're most likely like twice my age. I mean, we're talking people who I don't think they've ever played any other games except maybe the Wii. Going out there and doing this, and it's simple. I mean, there's microtransactions and all that, but it's pretty simple. You walk around a little bit. Oh, there's something, you just throw the little ball at it by flicking your finger on this. Just a sliding motion. And if you're playing safe, you'll be fine. Like moving groups and stuff. There's that social aspect to it, which I like. Now, because it's something new, and new is scary, you're going to see a lot of people being really phobic about it. That actually makes me think of something. When things are new and scary, there are people who get upset about it. Like, this is an interesting book, Turmoil in the Toy Box by Phil Phillips. Yeah. It's one of those books where the basic idea is your kids' toys are going to introduce them to the devil. Remember, this actually repeats. There was a story that went around about some guy who went down into the sewers playing D&D and died. That person, the person they mentioned in there, ran away from home for 2 days, and then came back home, and when he was found, he was depressed over something, but not Dungeons and Dragons. That person's name started being used in that story about Dungeons and Dragons, and there started to be all sorts of little documentaries about it. In fact, this has a good one about it, actually this one has a fun one in here about Star Wars and how that will bring your kids via Zen Buddhism to the dark side of the Force. They'll become witches and Darth Vader and Yoda and all these things. E.T. the extraterrestrial, Gremlins, and then all sorts of stuff. I mean, it's amusing how when something's new or popular, people will automatically think it must be evil. I mean, here's some stuff they talk about He-Man and My Pet Monster and She-Ra. Things like, we've always been adorable and sweet, now we're monstrous and gross too. They talk about Mad Balls and My Pet Monster and how these things you should not reflect upon. Your children shouldn't reflect upon those. One thing I find kind of interesting is that there's several pages about Barbie and how Barbie teaches sexism to children and bad body image and body shaming, and it's bad. It's against feminism, which also, by the way, is apparently evil too, according to these types of books. And that's that. When something's new, people are afraid of it. And you know what? We can't worry about them being afraid of it. We can't let them affect our enjoyment of the things that we like. People will always be afraid of something new. Even stuff that's old, even older concepts like self-reliance, people will be afraid of. And if I may quote the worst of the Star Wars movies... Wait, sorry, no? Yeah. I sense much fear in many people. You know, essentially it's like fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate. Hate leads to suffering. And that's kind of the problem. And now I'm going to talk a bit about more Pokemon. Or rather, hyper training. You see, I know a few people who do Pokemon videos. In fact, I run this thing called Street Pass Aurora, and Verlisify would show up at those. Or rather, Tony, Anthony. He would show up to those and he'd show off all these new builds and things and these interesting little tricks with Pokemon, and it's fun. We'd play against him sometimes. He's pretty good at Pokemon. At exploiting Pokemon moves. And here's something I want to talk about: hyper training. In particular, I watch his videos. I watch a lot of other people's videos too, and whenever he starts up some type of controversy over Smogon or CVCG or whatever, I just look at it the same way I do other things. You see, Pokemon, like any other type of sport, has leagues. Like, for example, you can't use aluminum bats in the major leagues, but you can in some minors and some little league. And that's okay. different leagues have different rules that they abide to, and that's important to them. Like if Smogon wants to ban certain types of Pokemon for use in their tournaments, they are welcome to do that. Don't like that? Make your own thing. Do your own thing. Part of Pokemon is the social aspect. The people who created Game Freak based it off of people going around and collecting bugs initially. The esports aspect of it is something new. And while there is always going to be stuff where like, hey, if something doesn't learn a move and you can't use one that knows a move that it won't learn in any capacity. See how that works? Anyways, the big thing was hyper training. There was some Sun and Moon information, and they talked about hyper training, which is where you can increase IV and EV, which are hidden values in Pokemon. It's similar to, well, I kind of knew they were going to do something like that, or with those, because Pokemon Sun and Moon has to do with, well, when they announced it, they stated that when Pokemon Red, Blue, and Yellow come out, you can play through those, and then you can transfer your Pokemon from Red, Blue, and Yellow to Sun and Moon. Made a big deal about that. And when they did that, I realized, some of the glitches are intact in Pokemon Red. So I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story about myself and my Mewtwo and my Articuno. Now, I used to babysit quite a bit, and I babysit these kids who were really into Pokemon. In fact, like, we all got our Mewtwo's and stuff. We'd fight against this. A fight between a Mewtwo would end up being kind of a stalemate between it. You're all throwing Swift at each other until someone falls, pretty much. Or you're hoping something hits a critical, okay? And that you win that way. Overall, those are kind of dead matches. They're not that good. It's more fun to mix it up with different types. But I noticed something about Pokemon. In fact, actually, we were pretty evenly matched. I named my Pokemon Sephiroth, Mewtwo Sephiroth, because I like that. I was like, yeah, if I could name a Mew, it'd be Genova, and then this Mewtwo would be Sephiroth. And that was kind of cool. But Sephiroth was pretty evenly matched with the kids I was babysitting with their Mewtwo, and I realized something. Well, I guess I'm going to have to just diversify his moves a bit, his moveset, because we're the same thing. We're pretty much the same power levels. It's kind of boring at that because we're all the same power level. So what I would do was I was playing through it, and I was one-shotting the Elite Four because I could one-shot the entire Elite Four with Sephiroth. And I was like, yes, this is fine. And I was like, I'm going to put him back in the box for a bit and try a different team. So I put Sephiroth back in the box. After I heal him, I put him in the box. And then I got my other Pokemon out. I went through again. I was like, I'm going to take him out again. When I went to take him out of the box, I realized that he was missing HP. This is in Pokemon Red, the original Game Boy game, right? And I was like, wait a second. Why is he missing HP? This seems weird. So I go and I heal him. And then I'm one-shotting the Elite Four again. And I put him back in the box and with my stuff. And then I take him out again and he's missing more HP. I was like, wait, that doesn't seem right. So what I did then is I wrote down the HP and then a bunch of his little stats. And then I went through a couple times with the Elite Four, put him back in the box after healing him, pulled him out of the box, and I realized he wasn't losing HP, he was gaining HP. And his special moves were going up. I thought it was like all of his stats were going up like 4 or 5 points. And I realized that I can level my Pokemon past level 100. You can refine them. And they've refined this system as we've gone along. Now that you can take Pokemon from Red, Blue, and Yellow, they have to do something to make up for that. They have to put hard limits on that. And so there's bottle caps here that you can use to raise those hidden values in IVs or whatnot. If you go look up some videos on those, it's crazy. There's all sorts of math in it. Now, this makes it easier for people to kind of cheat the system. You see, people can go out. I don't have one for the 3DS. This is an Action Replay DSi. I got it when I purchased another DS, at a garage sale, and this was there. So, yeah, some people use this. It's called genning, where people will generate a Pokemon with specific IVs or specific natures or a specific type. Now, I'm not particularly opposed to somebody doing this, because one thing that really irritates me is that when you get a mystery gift Pokemon, you can't rename them. You can't rename them. And that's always bugged me. So I want to rename them. To me, it's more fun if I can catch the Pokemon I want in the wild and rename it. Because some of those Pokemon are cool, but they're only special event Pokemon, so you can't rename them. But then some people use that to flesh out their specs to ridiculousness, or make it easier to get through. They skip a lot of time. It's time saving. You pay $25 to $30 and you save some time. Now, that could be bad, except for one thing. Remember I was telling you about with the Mewtwo? Next time I battled that kid, I smoked him. My Sephiroth was supreme, so far ahead of his stats that it was just beautiful, just a massacre. So naturally I was like, well, how did you do that? I was like, well, here's how I did it. I went through the Elite Four multiple times, healed, put him in the box, take him out of the box, stuff goes up. And we started doing this, and eventually we hit a point where both of our Pokemon were the same again, and you just hit that dead wall. And that's what happens. When you gen things, or when you do that, it comes down to not those stats anymore. It comes down to the move choices and item choices that you have. It comes down to the moves, it comes down to luck, it comes down to your strategy. That's why, like most of the time, if you've got a group of Pokemon, it's the build of your Pokemon set that's important. And what gets me is that I see videos where people are complaining about this, way impassioned about it. And I'm like, wait, you make videos, I'm talking to you, Tony, you make videos about unique Pokemon movesets being used in interesting ways, right? Let's say that all these Pokemon had the same stats. Oh no, none of these Pokemon are really special anymore, except for those moves and except for those natures. In other words, the creative movesets, the creative move combinations and strategy are pushed forward. Think of it as like the game of chess. All the pawns can move the same way. All the pieces can move the same way. They move the same way across the board. My queen can go anywhere on the board in a straight line or a diagonal line, as many spaces as she wants, but so can my opponents. And that makes it more about strategy. What Pokemon Company seems to be trying to do is address a little bit of that by making this more about the strategy of movesets and not the strength of the Pokemon. And since you do a lot of these creative sets and builds, you should know better about that. Also, I'm not trying to start any drama or whatnot. I really think that the whole drama videos with whole Pokemon stuff like blah, 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 I think that's kind of silly. It gets eyes, but it also loses people. It may gain some subscribers, but also loses subscribers. And I see a lot of people doing that. And this is not so much about subscribers as videos should be about, like, what do I want to make a video of? What do I want to talk about? And that's important. And sometimes you just gotta look at it from a different perspective. For me, I have no problem with people making shiny Pokemon or whatnot to be the Pokemon that they want. Now, using it in some leagues, if some leagues ban certain items or certain types of things, that's up to those leagues. And if even official leagues have no real rules on that, that could be like, say, steroid use in baseball. Going back to baseball. It's unfortunate, and if they want to really crack down on that, they should. And if they don't, maybe we could just enjoy the game. But for me, I think a lot of this competition boils down to the strategy and movesets that you use. And to that end, even if someone is cheating with like using all these things, these performance enhancing things, and building hyper training into that kind of eliminates the need to do that. It makes it a little harder to verify that, but you don't really need to, because cheating does not guarantee you will win. A clever opponent who's suddenly like, hey, I have all these fancy chess pieces. Look at this fancy chess piece. It's solid gold. Doesn't mean you're going to win. Because like Pokemon, like chess, it all comes down to your move set. Your strategy with your move set and how you use that. And that's important. And also, if I want to name my Mew Genova, and the only way to do that is to hook up a Game Shark because the Game Genie won't cut it, to my device to get myself a Mew, I already have a legitimate Mew, but it's named Mew. That's boring. Why not have a Mew that's named Genova to be part of my team? Seems fair. Because that's about personalization. That's something I can do for me. Would I use it in a tournament? No, I can't use it in a tournament. But yeah, still. That's because they didn't let you use Mew in the tournaments back when I was playing Pokemon Red and Blue and anticipating Yellow. So yeah, my take on all that drama, Pokemon Go drama, Pokemon Hyper Training drama, I think a lot of that's very overblown. People need to look at it, calm down, and say, hey, wait a second. Let's take this, turn it around, and say, hey, maybe this is good, and it's good for this. Or maybe, just because such and such person has much more speed, doesn't mean they have the moves to make that happen. It's not closed strategy. Just because your knight may not be jewel encrusted, but your knight still moves in L. And there's a huge board out there. And if you if you use that properly, if you strategize that properly, it'll work out for you. So guys, people, ladies, gentlemen, etc., everybody, creatures, my viruses, let me know in the comments below what you think of all the Pokemon drama. Hit that thumbs up if you haven't already. Go ahead and like our videos. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. And until the next video comes out, you are now caught up.